Good morning, it's Brian. It's the Art of Startup War, and what that means is that this is an amazing company that Expert Dojo have invested in. What are we going to do with this company? We're going to talk about why we invested in the company, and we're going to talk about why this is going to be a phenomenal investment for other people to do in the company. We're not talking as promoters. Every single company that we bring onto these podcasts, we are putting investments directly into the company, and we've either just done it or we fully intend to do it in the future, or both in most cases. A company I'm bringing on today, Beyond Pulse, is an incredible company. Founder is a brilliant founder, Marc-Andre. We're going to go deep into the hero's journey. We're going to go deep into the value proposition of the company. We're going to try and make it really interesting and exciting, because we know that there's investors listening. We know that there are entrepreneurs listening, and we know that there are folks that just want to see incredible companies hit the world listening. And for all of those people, you all want to make sure that you walk away in the end of this not just inspired, but also knowing about a great investment opportunity going forward. Marc-Andre, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
So can we, before we go into the hero's journey and we talk about all of the brilliant things that you've built and how incredibly difficult it's been and how rewarding it's become, tell me a little bit about Beyond Pulse and the genesis of the idea, and how maybe not just the moment that you realized this was something that was missing, but also the moment that you realized that you would actually be able to come up with a solution.
Yeah, thank you. So Beyond Pulse started when I started coaching in Montreal and fell in love with the environment in which kids train every day, and how do we really set up an environment of learning and for them to grow and enjoy sports for a lifetime, and not just to win a game here and there. I moved to the US. I was doing my master's in education, and I used the products that are available for everybody that are all science-based, and I wanted to learn about my players. And after a few sessions, by looking at the data, I realized that the players weren't the ones that needed help. Me as a coach was the one that really needed some input, some feedback on what I was doing. So I was looking at the data. I thought I was doing, a practice, and this is the environment I was putting my players in. And I realized that that was not the case. And the more we started diving into the data from great institutions like the Aspen Institute and Project Play, I realized that my situation was not the only one, that this is pretty common, where there is no objective feedback for coaches. So the coaches go, they train, they have a lot of knowledge because they watch the game, they do a course here and there, but they don't know exactly what they're doing, and nobody's helping them get better. So that was the idea behind Beyond Pulse. But then to go further, we needed to solve how all these technology are heavy, they're complicated, they cost a lot. So we had to take a model that was built very complicated, where was built for professional teams that had sports scientists and a ton of resource around them. And we needed to make a product that a coach who doesn't have a lot of time, a parent that goes to the soccer field and loves coaching at night after his hard day work, could be easily able to improve the environment, learn from it, interact with the players, with the parents in a really simple, a few clicks on your phone. And that's what we started building.
Incredible. And it's funny, when I think about coaches in general, who are phenomenal people, because not just our kids, it's us, it's everybody. We get better, right? You need someone. Everybody in life needs a coach anyway. But within sports, it's just like there's a spotlight on those people who are just dedicated to taking these lives, and many times those little lives, and turning them into something that they could really maybe never have even become themselves without having that influence in their lives. And I think, as kids grow into adults in the future and they think about their fondest memory of their mentors and people who really helped them, very often it's that coach figure that actually sits right in the front of it. The challenge the coach has, though, is that the coach, without these tools, is really just leading with bias. right? And sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative bias, and there will be some reinforcement of that bias. So, for example, if I score one goal in the game and I do it in all the games, I'm like, well, Brian doesn't really score very many goals. So maybe we should get somebody else focusing on the goal. Well, all of the data might point to an entirely different conclusion, which is that you have Brian in the wrong place. And actually, he's been setting up this other person over here who is putting the goals in. So by reorganizing the team is more effective and the people are more effective. So do you find that it is really a bias? Was that the main principle of people making decisions on before? Or what do you think went through the coach's mind before they had the opportunity to have Beyond Pulse?
It's a really, really fun one from an educator standpoint. We see the world with the lens that we know, right? And me as a young entrepreneur 4 years ago when I started building Beyond Pulse, I was looking at the company from the lens that I knew, not from the lens I have today. And now when things are happening, when we're in meetings, when I hear things, I'm picking up on way more information, different information. So you're really able to only pick up what you know and what you know. One really good example is the gorilla experiment. That I think I was at Stanford, where you have a team, players are passing a basketball, and then you ask the person to count how many passes the white team is making. And then in the middle of the screen, while you're focused on counting, there's a gorilla that walks in a gorilla suit, stops in the middle, hangs his chest, and then walks away. And then you ask people how many passes, everybody has a number, and you say, what about the gorilla in the screen? They're like, what gorilla? And we're talking over 50% of people don't see the gorilla. And when you look at it after, you're like, it's impossible. How did I not see that? And basically it comes back, our eyes tells us we're looking for things, right? We were looking to buy a car. And then suddenly someone talks to me about one type of car. And now I realize that car is on every corner all the time. And before that, I didn't see that car. And so this is what we have as an impact on coaches. Coaches they train, they're looking for kids and talent. They're looking for the technical ability. They're looking for these things. They're looking, is he working hard or not? And then when you give them a product and at the end of the practice, they can see a timeline and they could see that after the warm up, they talk for 9 minutes. And then they're like, well, I thought it was 2 and 3 minutes. Like, I didn't realize it was this long. Well, the time for the kids to go drink water, and then they come back, and then 1 minute is lost. And then you show the example. Then the coaches start seeing the practice from a different lens. And then also, I remember I was on the field in Ohio. The coach turns around and is like, oh, I can't wait for the data. Paul and Bryden, they're really, I can't remember the word. It was, I'm from Montreal. He used the word I didn't know. I mean, what does it mean? It's like, they're really lazy. And then we go to the data, and one of our metrics is heart rate. And the player's heart rate is in the roof. He's the highest one. So now you have a coach who actually looks at the player, thinks he understands this player. He sees something else now. And then suddenly he has a different lens. Now he looks at this player. Maybe he opens a conversation like, are you sleeping well? There's a lot of things that can impact your heart rate, for example. But now suddenly the coach is talking to the player from a different lens. He's probably not lazy. Maybe there's a lot of, variables that can affect the heart rate. But suddenly it's an extra layer. It helps the coach see the game or see the practice differently, that it helps them.
And the great thing about numbers it's the great truth. It's the only thing that will never, ever, ever lie is when you look at it. And so what other insights can you get? The heart rate is obviously tremendously important. When you were building this and you're like, okay, we want to make sure that we eliminate as much emotional bias as we possibly can. And we want to make sure that we replace that with pure logic, and that pure logic then we build on top of that so that coaches know what to do with that logic and they can create better teams and better kids, right? So when you realized that and you got to that moment, when you were building your value stack, how did you build that, and what did you want to include in the value stack? And of the things you wanted to get in there, how much actually did you manage to put in?
This is a fun question. So I worked with as close to pro level in teams where we had the sports scientists with the antenna by the field, and we would collect and we would brag that we've got thousands of data points, and in the end, and then the sports scientist would come. We would talk to the entire coaching staff, and we would take 3 numbers, and that's all we used, right? So ultimately for us, it was really, really important to focus on just a few actionable metrics, because more doesn't mean better. It just means more confusion. So heart rate is a really important one. Why? Because it's your internal response. It's how your body reacts to an activity. So there's a lot of elements. And one thing that I was in shock is when I worked with university students that I was teaching. I was talking about their heart rate, and nobody could actually talk about their heart rate. And then that made me really think about, well, how high is your heart rate? Why is your heart rate low? This is the engine that fuels every human. This is our engine. And nobody knows more. So by creating a bit of insight around heart rate and why it's important, I think we're helping for a healthy society now, realizing what you eat after will have an impact. So that was heart rate. The second metric is one that we thought there was a metric that wasn't there that was critical for the youth game. Is we call it active participation. Initially, we called it standing time, and it had a negative connotation. So we thought, let's change this. Let's thrive for more active time. World Health Organization says that kids should be active 60 minutes a day of moderate to vigorous activity. That's that metric. We take it, has nothing to do with intensity. Are you moving the most during the practice? What percentage of the 90 minutes you're on the field are you moving? Because at the core of learning, doing, moving, playing is what's going to make you learn. A coach talking, we don't learn. We don't learn from our parents telling us, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that. We learn once we tried it and we realize what the impact is. So that's active participation, was at the core of what we do. And then we have a workload, which is a mix of the number of sprints you've did, the distance that you covered at high speed. So that gives you the external load, meaning your heart is internal, and then the impact on your body of how many sprints you made. So we want to make sure that kids don't overtrain, and there's rest, because the more research goes, the more we realize that resting is critical in attaining 105% and not just always going at 95%. And then the last key metric we present to our users is distance. So just plain distance to help you gauge what distance did you cover in a game or a practice, to help you create an environment from game to practice that is as close as possible that you want as a coach.
But as a parent, I want to know those things. Like, I want to know, and I would like to know those things if I can, as a comparison to the other kids. Like, I don't need names of kids, but I would really like to know as a comparison to the kids in the class, because if there's 30, 40 kids in the class, and I know, because really those three factors are the most important thing. Like, if you're not moving at all, well, there's something to discuss there. It doesn't mean that even that they're lazy or something, that there might be something bigger to discuss that we need to look at, and then if that activity is not very much, then that's a problem as well. If the distance you've gone isn't huge, and if your heart rate is not in line with those things, it's almost like a perfect trifecta that you're looking for. And you want someone to be at an optimal level of the game. And if you have them at an optimal level, okay, great, I've got like a kid. But if you have them falling off, then you can bring that up. And it's not hey, you know what? You didn't move at that game. And they're going, well, what do you mean I didn't move at that game? I did move at that game. It's not, you don't have that conversation. It's not a you and me. It's not a confrontation. It's not an argument. It's just, look, here's the data. And you got a choice now. It's either something which might be medical, which we need to look at, or it's something where you just say, like, do I want to be competing on a certain level of the class, or do I choose to be in this place? But it suddenly becomes very intentional for the people who are involved. And I really like that, because if we don't measure something, we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, we don't show everybody's data, like you said, but you do see the team or the class average, right? So now
that's what I mean, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't want to
exactly.
say names. Yeah,
exactly. So it's amazing, because now you have an idea, and what it does, it opens conversation. It creates this transparency where the parent can now be involved, instead of just picking up your daughter, or at the end when your daughter comes back from school, how was school, how was PE? Now you can actually have a conversation. So, wow, you did a lot here. I see you lower than other teammates or your classmate. Can you tell me more why? And we open a conversation. And now the coach and the teacher has to also engage with that. So it's not hiding behind this, nobody knows what's happening. And we're creating this transparency where, working together, we can create a better environment for the kids.
Yeah, so it's huge. So I spent a few minutes longer on the product fit because it's so interesting and it's so important. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how important this is for kids later on and about their development and about their growth. This is not just about how active is somebody on a football pitch, versus, the rest of the people in the team. This is about how well developed is your child going to turn into an adult. But we're going to get there a little bit in the future. For now, everybody's got it, right? You can see how it works. What I, and so I looked at this when we were doing diligence on the company. I looked at this. I'm like, okay, cool. Are all coaches going to want this? Is this frictionless innovation, whereby the coaches will want this because it will give them better information for better decision making, so they can have conversations with parents that are real? Because actually, another thing I never even mentioned with coaches, like it's the worst being a coach and having to talk to a parent about their kid's performance. Because no matter what you say about their little prince or princess, there's no way that you as a coach knows anything. So when you just hold data up and you say, look, we want to help your kid. This is where it is right now. Why don't we all work together to improve them? So for all those reasons, I love it. And I always loved it. And I'm like, okay, frictionless innovation. Coaches, are they going to love it? Yes, frictionless innovation. Parents, are they going to want to see that their kids are just, that they're being the best that they can be? Yes, wonderful. Kids, are they going to want to be able to tell without having somebody judging them, being able to see where they are quantifiably? Yes, frictionless innovation, beautiful. So for me, that thing was great. Now, if there hadn't have been a pandemic, I might have said, this is super easy to get to market. Yeah, you have to be a great entrepreneur to think of it, to build it, to get it out. But actually, the market will kind of take care of itself because this thing will sell itself, right? However, you had the pandemic where literally pandemic was like the craziest thing. Like if you'd have said to me 5 years ago, Brian, I bet you $1 million that every single bar in Ireland will close for a year without explanation, I'd be like, you know what? I give you 50 to. Not only will I bet you everything I earn in my entire life, I will bet you everything my entire family for the next 4 generations earns, that there will not be a day that every bar in Ireland closed. But like every bar in Ireland closed and every school closed. And suddenly there were no kids playing games. There was nobody out in football pitches. Like this would have killed. You had the most perfect business with the most incredible timing, ready for market. And then you had 2 years where you just literally got kicked in the face every day. And I know behind you, you've got that great quote of the man in the arena, which is there. But like you have to have been the man in the arena for those 2 years or that year and a half when you had something that you knew the world desperately needed, but you had no people. There was nobody on football pitches. There was nobody on baseball grounds. There was nobody there. Just take us through the difficulty and the challenge of just surviving mentally, the unfairness of that shitty, shitty situation.
Yeah, I still remember when I heard the first, for me, I think it's the NBA that canceled this season. I think they're the first big organization that said season is canceled. And I'm like, wow, I'm walking back home from a great restaurant just near the house. And I'm thinking, wow, this got really real. Like whatever, we know the media can blow up something and you're wondering. And it's something I'm like, okay, this is real. We've got something here that's going to be a real impact. I think in the start, I think I've heard this a few times, but there's a naivete when you start your company, when you do this project that is so bigger than you, and you go in. I think the same naivete took over me and the 2 other founders when the pandemic hit, because we're mission driven, because for us there's so much we're doing so critical. We right away saw that now all the kids were home and they had nothing to do. So for us, we had 2 options. Either we go into this little bubble and we shut down and we don't do anything and we wait, or we see it as an opportunity where we can get better and also give a value back to our users. So one of the features that we were thinking about that we hadn't done was the player app. So now the player app meant that all these players, all our users across the US that would train with their teams, with a coach, could use the player app and sync and share back with their teammates at home and everybody could see that everybody's participating. So now the coach was excited because he said, well, can you go out and play 3 times a week? And so we put all our energy, and for us, it was, okay, there's another opportunity. We did a small partnership with Nike Soccer, where we had prizes for the kids that were the most active during the pandemic. So we believed, and this is, I think, the strength and what brings us here today is we just believed. And I think I'll say I think the hardest part was realizing when after the whole summer we thought everything would come back, and then another hit comes, and then you realize, okay, we're in for the long run, and now it becomes one of just grind and keep it working, putting this team smaller and realigning ourselves and making sure that what we do really well. So I feel that there was a somewhat of a chance in the middle of this difficulty where we had the chance to focus, to make the process better. We did more interviews with our users, understanding, how do we improve the design thinking? How do we improve the experience? So we just took each part of the company and started putting time to improve it. So and now we realize that today, slowly you have markets like California, New York that are restarting, but there's still a lot of disruption in the soccer and all the different sports where they're coming back, but there's still an instability. What's next? So this is where we are today. We had a great year.
But you did have a great year. That's my point. Like,
yeah,
you sold stuff. Like, you brought in great revenue this year. You didn't just survive and make your way through it. Like, you fought. I would say you thrived. Like, to have got zero money in and just survived, I would have said, you know what, that's pretty good.
yeah.
To have got a little bit of money in and just survive, I would say that's pretty good. But like, you did a great revenue for the year, and you built phenomenal relationships within new divisions that you'd never even looked at before. So
Yeah.
I would say this is maybe the greatest year you've ever had in the craziest way.
Oh, totally. From a sales perspective, it's our best year, and from a company standpoint, with the team that we have, everybody stuck with us, and we've just made a stronger team in the middle of this. Like, it's not a it's you watch professional teams fall and you see them struggle. It's actually it's an opportunity to learn and to get better and reinforce. And now we're ready for more, and we're ready for the next big year, which is exponential growth, right? Going and having a really big year, and with the stability we built, I think that's the excitement we have.
So talk to me about that growth. I do really want to talk about the team, but just the growth. This is too perfect to lead directly into the growth. Is 2022 going to be the greatest year you will ever have? And I don't mean that you won't earn more revenue in the future, but you will. But it seems like 2022 is primed on every level. You're looking great from a funding perspective. You're looking great from a revenue perspective. The kids are back in school. The football fields are filling up. The coaches are looking for more data to be able to make better decision making. The parents are so worried about the fact that their kids have been cooped up for the last year and a half that we just want them to be happy, right? And being out and being active and being in the fields and being the best that they can be is them being happy. So it almost seems like all moons have aligned to benefit you for the coming year in a huge way. What does that look like?
It starts now with the different seasons starting, and ultimately all the work, all the groundwork, all the contacts we have that now are back to stability in 2022. All this work now is like, okay, we're not just surviving a pandemic. All these organizations who told us and said, this is awesome, like this will change the environment that we have in. So, we really narrowed down on soccer to start, because that was our area of comfort, of knowledge. We are not a soccer product. We are a youth development product. So either you're lacrosse, field hockey, basketball, or you're in classroom and doing PE, we're made. The platform is built for the entire organization, from the people leading it to know what's happening to the coaches, the players, and the parents. So now we're working with some of the top organization in lacrosse, in field hockey. So now we're adding these two sports this year. Soccer itself is going to be, California's reopening, Texas, Florida, there's over 5,000 just in soccer clubs across the country. So we're talking 4 million kids that are playing and back in full speed sports. So we're looking at 4 to 8x in terms of our growth this year.
Whoa,
really excited.
I love that. I'll say that slowly. 400 to 800% growth year on year. That's a unicorn. That's brilliant.
Which seems hard to believe, but when you realize the landscape of youth sport, once you get, the competitiveness between clubs, each city has 10 to 20, 30 clubs. The Bay Area, there's 250 clubs. People are competing for these products. So when one product comes in and shows its value, now all the parents are looking, why do they have this? Why don't we have it? So that's where that exponential growth happens, right? We need to build that early adopters, but once we pass that little slope, then it's that hockey stick that just really goes.
And by the way, we talk about kids, but it's kids, parents, everybody, right?
It's
everybody. It actually, and it starts with coaches, but actually it then goes beyond coaches to virtual coaches and having every single person being able to tell how they're performing, even against previous performances, right?
Yeah, totally. One of the elements we bring back is you think how great some of the technology from, we used to just watch TV, but then you have Netflix, you have YouTube. It's not just, now we're creating that dopamine. They know what to give you next. They know how to grab your attention, right? You're looking at video games. The video games are getting better at making sure you want to go spend an extra hour playing because they know what's going to make it more appealing to you. And it's the same thing with your cell phone and the different social media. Well, we are bringing that to youth sport. We're saying, we want more kids playing sports. And if we don't fight and using the technology that is, for the good, and we don't use this technology, then we're letting down our kids by not giving them those tools to be more passionate about the activity they're doing and comparing with others. And when I say comparing, it's more about growth mindset than I'm fast or you're slow. It's like, wow, look, I'm doing more week after week. I spend more time playing this week. I'm in a healthier state.
It's funny though, I do, because I'm with you on the kids, right? I have a beautiful little 15-year-old fella, and like you've got your little one. I love him dearly, and nothing we want, like we chop off our arms to make sure that they were okay, right? But he started playing tennis, and then I hadn't played tennis for 15, 20 years. But then he started playing. He's like, hit me some forehands. I'm like, well, hang on a sec. Hit me some forehands. Like, what, you think I'm past my prime? I'm not past my prime. Maybe I'm going to go back for another go. And then I suddenly found, and now we play tennis 2-3 times a week. And it is the greatest thing for me to have exercise. And it makes me look at folks that are like in their 40s or 50s or 60s, even late 30s, right? And they've got their kids. And you see them going to the football fields, like even like the local parks. And there's like 15 dudes against 15 dudes, or women playing another sport. And these people go out, and for a moment, just for a moment, they are contending professionals in their own mind, right? And for that 45 minutes or that hour, they want to be there. So I see this as like huge for kids. And I know that's your beachhead and that's where you're going after. But actually, as things go forward, this is about a healthy race. It's about us living longer. It's about us being healthier. And the more data and demographics that we have about ourselves and how we're reacting to the one thing that's actually really, really good for us and balances out maybe all of the bad stuff we do for the rest of the day, just the longer we're going to live, the better we're going to be as a people. So it's a big thing. Do you see it similarly, or how do you, if you're looking forward 5 or 10 years, where do you see yourself? As far as impact, not just revenue. I think this is going to be $1 billion company. I'm very comfortable with the financials, the projections, but like, where do you see yourself as I impacted the world? I'm sitting in an armchair and I'm looking at the effect that I've had.
Oh, I mean, for my wife makes fun of me because she hears me talk to someone and I'm saying, yeah, this is a paradigm shift in coaching where at the core of the coaching, the play, we're bringing back play into the lives of players, where I think we moved on to this element of just training, and it's training, training, training. And we're forgetting so many variables, where I think the most important thing you just said is like going back and playing. Like there's nothing more fun than I see just kids going at the park and playing, right? And if coaches, if everything we do in PE, if we're setting this environment that it's so much fun, they're going to go on their own, and then they're an adult, and then they go play. Why? Because they have fun, they play, which I think we let down on that element in the last few years, few 20 years. I think we professionalized sports and kind of let down the mass, and creating this environment of sports, which is one of a lifetime of one of lifetime, where you're doing sports for a lifestyle. You're not doing just sports to compete. So it's not, when you're done with your season, you're still going, you're still playing, because we build that environment of the love of the game.
Yeah, that's
whatever
so
game you're
beautiful.
playing, not one sport, but whatever you're doing in the activity.
Yeah, that's so beautiful because you're right. The whole did you score? Did you win? They're not the questions. Nobody even remembers in 20 years' time. The question is, were you the best that you could be? In that moment, when you went out there, when you went out to have a bunch of fun with your friends, did you go out there and actually achieve the maximum amount of fun? And if you didn't, it's great because we're going to help you achieve more. And by the way, if you follow these particular metrics, you will get better anyway because one is inherently tied in with the other. But more important, you'll be happier and healthier. And I know that like this is a deep, deep, deep belief for you for kids is being able to give them this road to happiness and take them away from a lot of the toxic messages. It takes all of the people who end up twisted and wasted and hateful and moves them into a place of just beautiful energy and spirit. So it's a great world. I do want to finish because normally I finish on like the future and where it's going, but it's just so exciting with you. I wanted to get there beforehand. I want to finish in this case with the team that can help get it there. So any investor who's listening to this is going to think, yeah, it's awesome. They did great during COVID. They weren't crushed. They actually thrived, which means it should be amazing. The product fit makes total sense. The coaches are going to love it right now. As for virtual coaching in the future to supplement coaching, it's an obvious no-brainer there as well. Kids are going to love it. Older folks are going to love it as well because it's right. Like product fit, yes. But do the team have the chops to be able to take it all the way? So talk to us about who you have in the team, how you chose the team, and how that team will stay skill gapped or will close those skill gaps, building towards the Series A and Series B and so on going forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. At the core, I think the naivete that I was referring to at the beginning of this is awesome. We have an idea, it's going to happen. Then you start building this and you realize, well, we need to have a lot of people that are good at what they do. They're passionate and they're dedicated to build it. So the two other co-founders is I wake up every day lucky to be working with them, and even after 4 years, Michael Supp did his PhD in education. He has a long life. He's a long life learner, and the reality is I could see him at the beginning. He was finishing his PhD, and he would work all day, and then in the evening he would lock himself in the library and finish his PhD. And like that type of mindset and dedication is very, very rare that you don't find in a lot of places. And so that's Michael. Michael is leading the team in general with all the operations. Mm-hmm. He's been on the field for 3.5 years, meeting the coaches, understanding. I think our biggest strength and our biggest passion, and one of mine, is the design thinking. The more everything we see, every product, how simple can we make it? How non-intrusive? How can we get in? Because it's so easy, one button not at the right place, and suddenly, the product doesn't make sense and the user experience isn't great. So
I love it.
That's Michael. We have Mark Wilson. Mark Wilson played for Manchester United, played in the MLS, became a director of coaching, and realized, wow, we have an issue. So Mark is building the relationships, working with the federations, the different organization. I was listening to I forgot her name, but the former CEO at PepsiCo.
Yeah.
What an inspiration this lady is. And she was talking about it's not just one thing to build something for today, but it has to live in the future. And what's great about Beyond Pulse is every time we talk to federations, they see the value and they're like, this is critical in where we're going next. So for us to work with the federation, we get a lot of excitement. On the product side, I'd say this was a big piece for us that was really important. We've added the team that was behind the innovation at Adidas for over 15 years. So they're behind us. They help us, use your experience and make sure that we're building something, again, that is simple, but really impactful and actionable for everybody. Yeah. And on the sales side, we just brought in a new team member that, has a lot of experience in youth sport, in the video, which was a really big thing and still growing in video. So has a giant knowledge of the landscape. We brought in three advisors, Barry McNeil, who led Catapult, which is the largest wearable technology. If you watch NFL, hockey, any sports, they're wearing Catapult, those biggest organizations. After building their entire sales team and bringing Catapult to an international company, he's on our advisory board. And his main reason is you understand clearly the simplicity, the element that is needed for the mass, not just for the elite. And that's why he joined us. And then we have Claude Ribual, who was head of Coca-Cola football, YouTube Digital, and started Universal Sports, who is now the Olympic Channel, the founder. He's on our board to help. And then we have Jan Martin, who was head of Reebok and Reebok Europe on the branding side and the product. So we really have all the tools to take our idea. And, an idea is great, but how do you execute? How do you go to the next level? And
it's
a
dream team. Mate, you got the Lakers. You got the Lakers and you got two A teams. You got your A team sitting on the bench as well. It's a great team, and you're absolutely right. You've done every area. The product, just pristine focus on the product, making it simple and easy. The operations to make sure it runs smoothly. The business development and the branding to make sure you're out there. And then having the people who built the greatest brands of today and tomorrow right there alongside you, building with you. I got to tell you, as an investor, my pleasure to have invested. I'm so pleased that we have a little stake in your phenomenal company as far as what we're going to be doing and what we're going to build with you going forward. As a mentor and a friend and someone who's alongside with you, man, I'm proud of what you're building. I think it's awesome. It's going to be a legacy for the future, and I'm looking forward to being right there behind you when you're ringing that bell in a couple of years' time. Can you share your details with everybody on the podcast and just make sure that everybody has them so that all investors who are listening to this could just reach out to you directly?
Yeah, so easily if you come to our website, Beyond Pulse, so Beyond Pulse, Pulse like a heart pulse.com. My email is Marc, M-A-R-C. It's the French version, M-A-R-C at beyondpulse.com. Send me an email. So yeah, that's the main. I've got my Twitter, coach_Maillet. I think that's the main ones.
Beautiful. Okay, wonderful. Marc-Andre, let's build this sucker.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Love the talk today.
Sweet. That's a wrap.